You're a holder of chip names. People have questioned how far they've run. Do they still have further to go?
You know, at Jennison, we always take a longer-term view, and our view remains very constructive. When we look out over 3-5 years, we still see extraordinary opportunities for penetration of AI, and that is really broadening out in its applicability in industries. So we still are very constructive.
When you say broadening out, does that mean you take money off the table from the winners that we've seen, the NVIDIAs that I mentioned, and put it into industry groups that now benefit from AI, or do you have to do both?
Our view is you have to do both. There are the core experts in compute, led, of course, by NVIDIA, which I believe is a core holding to own for a long, long period of time, and also Advanced Micro Devices. But the very existence of parallel compute or accelerated compute is creating opportunities throughout various industries, whether it be energy, whether it be for other semiconductor companies, whether it be for healthcare. So we're really looking at a broad base of opportunities for these companies to address.
It's been really interesting in the show for probably almost 2 years, speaking with investors who are basically ripping off the paneling of a server design and learning what's going into it. You know, now a name like Micron is starting to get credit. At GTC, we can get into GTC and all the fantastical things that Jennison said, but he was slapping Michael Dell on the back and saying, oh, if you need a server, this is the guy. Is that your kind of approach? How the compute gets built in its entirety, and then work out the component providers and invest in those?
So this is such a great question, because on one hand, the very essence of compute, how compute is done, has changed. The demand for memory, as you talk about, the demand to be able, the demand created for distributing power, generating power, dealing with power, thermal envelopes, for example, are all changing, and that's creating extraordinary opportunities on the infrastructure side of the business that we're very interested in. On the other side, the actual advent of accelerated compute has applicability to everyone from smart cities to healthcare applications. We're looking at things like drug discovery, medical imaging, sequencing as being enabled by the advent of accelerated compute.
Here we are, and we led you to it, but we're talking about markets and the tailwind that is AI. That's top of mind. We're not talking about rates. We're not talking about concerns of global economic strength. We're not talking about geopolitical headwinds. Why?
I think the interesting thing to think about is that this technology is disruptive to literally every single industry. So while there are always going to be cyclical concerns, whether it be one specific geographic region is slowing down, or perhaps pressure of inflation or interest rates, at the end of the day, what we're seeing right now is literally every single industry being disrupted by the advent of AI. And so I think that discussion happens not in a vacuum, but it probably drowns out to a certain extent some of the more macro concerns.
I want to talk, we just mentioned that we're not talking about geopolitical tensions. I want to weave in the ongoing geopolitics that is China and US, because it does affect a lot of the chip names that you hold. We're actually just getting breaking news that Xi Jinping, leader of China, and indeed President Biden, have held phone talks. Xinhua, which is a local news organization over in China, has been reporting this. No real details on the phone talks and what indeed was discussed, but China's official news agency reporting that President Xi has spoken with President Biden of late. Now, we know within that context is the fact that US has been limiting sales of US chips to China, worried about the application of such technology in China. Has that worried or in any way changed your opinion on how much to go into some names that are exposed to China, NVIDIA being one of them?
So from a semiconductor equipment perspective, those U.S. companies that sell equipment to make chips, they've also been banned from selling their most advanced equipment into China. I think that at the end of the day, what that does is it forces semiconductor companies to look for locations outside of Taiwan, outside of China to build. And what we've seen is an unprecedented amount of government support around the world to build more semiconductor plants. That's a great tailwind for semiconductor equipment for years and years to come. Layer on top of that, that the semiconductor chips themselves are becoming more semiconductor equipment intensive. This is a long time tailwind for the industry going forward. On the semiconductor side, as you say, what we're finding is that where there's a will, there's a way. People want to have the compute. So it may take place in different geographic regions, but the ultimate necessity is there and driving the demand for NVIDIA beyond even what we had thought 3 months ago.
Caroline and I have no problem talking about semiconductors all day long, but there are other things out there. I mean, we're going to talk about the Rubrik IPO later in the program. How do you feel about software, cybersecurity? You know, there must be more opportunity out there in the world than beyond a GPU or a combination of CPU and GPU.
You know, right now, I think that there's extraordinary opportunity for apps to be developed to take advantage of this compute. And so basically, what we're seeing is a scramble, an incredible innovation on the software side to be able to analyze big data, being able to sort through huge amounts of data and then make sense of it so that companies can understand consumer patterns, the progression of certain certain diseases, even modeling out how drugs may behave as they're developing them. So the software is very, very critical in this this process. Not to mention the cybersecurity is an absolutely essential part of this too, because this is at the core, the company's, whatever company it is, best assets. That intellectual property must be protected, and that's why cybersecurity is also seeing such a strong backdrop of demand.